So a common misconception that people have is because you're the councillor, you are the council and you have the power of the council. But it's actually not the case. And I think I reflected on this when we spoke last, Rebecca, that actually a lot of the time I am also lobbying on behalf of my constituents. So I'm lobbying the council, I'm lobbying all sorts of bodies to get change in the local community on behalf of our residents. So in simple terms, a councillor is there to deal with primarily local issues. I guess the biggest difference between a councillor and a local MP is that the Member of Parliament is someone who goes to Westminster and acts on behalf of constituents in Westminster. We work solely on a local level, but really we get a mixture of things coming to us that are both within the job description, I suppose, and those that are not. But actually what I always try and do as a councillor is never turn anyone away. You know, when I first got involved in the Labour Party back in 2010, one of my political mentors said to me, Ahmed, if somebody turns to you with hope in their heart that you can help them, that you can assist them, never turn them away. So I will never say to somebody, I'm sorry, it's not my role, I can't do anything. I will always try my utmost to help that person in whatever situation they're in, even if it means just signposting them to somebody who's better placed to help. So I know it's a bit of a convoluted answer, but it's certainly been my experience over the past couple of years of what we do as councillors.
Thank you so much. That was such a hopeful and uplifting answer. Cleo, may I come to you next?
Sure. It's such a diverse range of things that we do. Every day is different. So to pick one case study probably wouldn't give a clear idea of what's involved. Of course, as Ahmed has just said, it's about casework a lot of the time. Casework, so representing the ward or the area. We're elected to specific areas in our city, for example. So it could be anything. It could be a planning application for someone to convert their property. Perhaps they need a bit of support or advice about that. A lot of the time, a resident will have a query that they've tried to follow up directly with the council itself in terms of a specific department. Maybe it's waste collection, but sometimes that can be a slow process. And one of the benefits of being a councillor is that you can kind of speed things up. Just by emailing the officer directly, you often find that means that the resident gets the answer they're looking for far more quickly. So it's a very, very useful facility to have, to be able to use your local councillor. Again, it can be signposting. Listening is incredibly important. We can't solve everything, but actually being that listening ear and having some empathy is sometimes what people are looking for. We also attend full council, so all the councillors come together. It tends to be a little outside once a month, but maybe every 5 weeks or so. There we can ask questions, we can put statements in, because the function is, if you're not in the administration, i.e., running the council, then your job in, I don't like the word, but opposition, if you like, or critical friend, I'd prefer that term, is that you're asking questions and you're scrutinising, you're seeing the work that's going on and you're feeding in. And to that end, we sit on various committees. So as well as attending the full council, doing the casework to represent our residents with their queries, we also sit on various internal and external bodies. It could be of a creative nature or a tourism nature, like Destination Bristol. I've sat on that board as a councillor, because many of these partners across the city do have spaces for council to be on them. Also, I would say, as well as representing the people who live in my ward, I also, being a woman of African heritage, I also get people from my community coming to me, even if they don't live in my ward, because they feel I'm the go-to person who's best placed to represent them or to take up their queries. So that there is that extra layer of work, if you like, which maybe some of the other people on the panel also experience. I'm also on the Avon Fire Authority. So that again is made up of councillors from the area. And we oversee the management of our fire and rescue service in the region. And that is quite demanding. I also chair the People and Culture Committee for the Avon Fire Authority. And I've, had a leadership position in directing a cultural change in the institution. And that is a lot of work. Also, things like speaking up for causes. We'll often be invited to different rallies whether it's, the Windrush scandal or anti-austerity or a number of things. We're asked to give our view and to speak up and speak out. And then also other initiatives like bringing people together. So I was able to work again with the fire authority and fire service to use fire stations and encourage members of the public and businesses to drop off unused laptops, to donate those, and then partnered with an organisation who could clean them, wipe them, get software on, and get these out to families who needed them through lockdown. So we can really use our positions to do a lot of things and bring people together and get projects off the ground, so it's from casework, sorting out someone's rubbish, to getting projects off the ground, to speaking out for people who feel they haven't got a voice.
Amazing, thank you. And thank you for giving us a response that gives us an insight into the structure of how councils work, because I think that's something that people don't, well, certainly I, until started working in politics, had no idea about that, and still now have to relook things up. So that was really helpful. Thank you so much. Mark.
Thank you. Like Cleo, as leader of the council, I get a lot of stuff that comes across to me, not just in my ward. So I could talk about loads of different things, and actually both speakers so far have. And I thought what Ahmed said was lovely and absolutely true, and it's the way I do it, which is if anyone comes to you with hope for help, you got to help them, and you listen. Even listening may be the key thing, and they might say, I know you can't help me, Mark, or whoever they're talking to, but thank you for listening and taking it on board. But I will always try and help, to the frustration of some officers and some colleagues that, no, you can't do that. And it's like, well, I can try. I can only try. So I'm going to be cheeky like the others and kind of cram in 3 examples with a subset in each one. So I'm really proud of leading my council to be the 3rd best rated in the country by Friends of the Earth for being greenest council in terms of carbon footprint reduction and biodiversity gain and many things like that. And one of the things was to ban the glyphosate weed killer from our borough, from our use, and influence others. Secondly, housing. Housing is so fundamentally important to the success and the well-being of individuals. So one small example would be one of my first pieces of casework years ago was to help an adult with learning disabilities, to get independent living themselves. And I was able to do that, and that was fantastic. That makes you feel so proud and happy that you're able to help someone, because security to them means so much, shelter and a secure base. And secondly, as leader of the council, we've put in loads of money to build council houses, affordable homes for people, and greening those homes as well. So that's something that we do use a company. So we develop the homes ourselves, so we can sell off some for profit in order to plough it back into building council homes. And the third thing, you can do a lot of reactive stuff as a councillor. Lots of things come to you, but it's great to do the proactive things as well. So 2 proactive things I'm doing. One, as the borough, we are in a 2-tier system here. So we have a county council above us who run youth services, and they do it very badly. I'm afraid they've cut it back over years and years and years, and austerity has not helped. So we're looking to, as a borough, spearhead what's called a youth zone that some of the other panelists might have heard of or have near them, which is like a 22nd century kind of youth zone that has a youth centre that has so many different connected services in, which I think was needed before COVID and doubly is needed now because of the kind of crazy insecurities that younger people face with, whether it be work, qualifications, or just mental health and seeing each other and social stuff that they've lost. So that's a proactive thing. And the second proactive thing on a much smaller level is just as you come into my little town, we had a new cycle path built, which was great, but where they kind of built it, it just looks like concrete and barren dirt. So I'm planting that up in a bee-friendly way. So it's going to be a nice biodiversity gain, and it's going to look pretty, and put a little boat there because we're on the river. So it's all going to look nice and pretty. So that's my run through of what we do.
Amazing, thank you. It gives a real feel for your area, the 3 examples that you gave, so thank you. And one of them was about youth and young people, and I know that's something that you're passionate about, Alex. So I wondered if I could come to you for your kind of run through what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose that the good thing about coming last is I can just pick and choose from all the 3 examples from the previous panel. So I mean, Ahmed's words about hope in residents' hearts with an issue, I mean, that's so powerful, and I think that's what's driven many of us to get into local politics because we genuinely want to make a difference. And you can see from the diversity on the panel in terms of our backgrounds, age, Mark being the youngest councillor, Cleo being the first Lord Mayor over there. I mean, there's so much that we represent just visually, just being a part of the process, which I think is so impactful. I kind of want to break things down into sort of 3 sections, really. But firstly, as Mark mentioned earlier, there are levels of local bureaucracy. So you may have a town or parish council, you then may have a city above that, and then in terms of the MP, and then maybe like a regional mayor. So there are different levels, and they all have different fundings, different responsibilities, etc. So it's important to know to target whatever issue that you want to that person. For example, you talk about foreign policy, for example, to your member of parliament, but waste collections and education would be towards your local council. But in terms of the work that I do, so I would probably separate it into 3 sections, very similarly to how Cleo has as well. You would very much get your casework. You've got your cabinet member and sort of portfolio responsibilities, but then also, I suppose, campaigning as well. So I sort of see it as 3 lines. The cabinet member work, so I'm the shadow cabinet member for children's wellbeing, and that covers children with special education needs. And as the governor of a special needs school, that all sort of ties together. And I want to try and use my experiences to make a positive difference within the city in that area. So there's lots of meetings, there's full council meetings that go on for hours, and you come up with a policy and then it just gets shelved. And it's incredibly frustrating, a long bureaucratic process, but very important to get the long-term strategy of the city and policies and things, and to keep an eye on how things are over a number of years. And that's kind of the meeting side of it. And then as Mark and Ahmad are saying, there's lots of really positive casework that you can do, very impactful directly to residents. And then also campaigning. So everything that we do, we try to get our message out to say what we're doing, that this is what your local council is doing, to support the work of other councillor colleagues, etc., and the wider issues of the city. In terms of some really positive work, I mean, I found you've got the high level meetings where you've got, 50 people and MPs, and, you get all that sort of stuff. But I found the stuff that really makes the most difference to me is actually the direct emails or a phone call you get from, I vividly remember as an 85-year-old lady who lives by herself having difficulties with getting a council tax refund. It was only around sort of £250. But she was getting really frustrated and stressed and agonising over the process and how to do it. She gave me a phone call. I sent an email, didn't think much about it. And then a couple of weeks later, I got a lovely handwritten letter in old calligraphy. And it was just saying, thank you so much for your help. You don't know how much stress I've had to go through, how much you've helped, how much this money means to me. And it really does just get you thinking about, I get goosebumps sometimes when you think just how the ripples effect of the work that we do and how we try to help, how it just goes on and on.
Amazing, thank you. And it's great to see the questions coming in on the chat as well. There's some definite themes coming through. The first one that I wanted to put to you was from Leo, and he is interested to know what it was like running your first campaign and kind of the process that you went through during your first election, whether you're in a safe seat, kind of whether you were up against other people in your own party, and just, I guess that's what mode most people are in at the moment, because we're close to an election. What's it like being on the campaign trail? Cleo, if I come to you first this time.
Well, it's exciting, it's demanding, it can be exhausting, and you need a very, very good team around you. So I think those are the 3 main things I'd say. Short and sweet.
Brilliant, thank you. Did anyone have like a nail-biting campaign or anything that was Mark? Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with everything Cleo just said. Exhausting, exhilarating, great all at the same time, and especially when you're getting 2 recounts is what mine took at about 3 a.m. in the morning. Wow. So yeah, when I first stood, I was not in a safe seat, a seat that the Lib Dems had never won before, but it did have the university in it. It was the only seat in the country that had 2 Conservatives representing a university. So don't worry, Alex, I liberated it and made sure that's never happened again. Yeah, we were getting university students, because usually you go knocking on doors on the day to get people out to come and vote. But by about 9 o'clock, you don't want to knock on any older sort of people's houses. That's just bad. Whereas we went to the uni and they're just waking up, it's 9 o'clock. It's kind of like midday to them. So I remember my sister grabbing some guy's skateboard that he was on, saying, right, off you go. Let's go and vote. I'll carry that for you. And we won by 25 votes. So it's quite really exhilarating, and an upset. They didn't see it coming, because I was 19 throughout the campaign and turned 20 just a few days before. So that kind of rocked the situation and stopped actually the Conservatives getting control of the council in that time. And we formed a coalition of Lib Dem, Labour and Independents, and that's continued for the last 10 years.
Nail-biting stuff with the double recount and the small number of votes. Whenever people ask, does my one vote really matter? There are examples. I spoke to a councillor yesterday who won by one vote. So 24 seems like a comfortable victory, I would imagine. But yeah, brilliant. Alex, I feel like I should invite you.
Thank you. I mean, it's great that Mark's given me some campaign tips as well. I'll take those away in the future with my skateboard. Absolutely. I mean, I stood for local. I was just telling Ahmed before we joined the call. I got in on a by-election on 2015. Then there was the election in 2016 proper, and then we had all-out elections in 2018. So there was a long run of elections, and similar to Cleo, journey, it's almost kind of being at the right place at the right time, would you say, as well? So there's opportunities that arise sometimes with people standing down, with issues happening with councillors, and then if you just happen to be there, actually, opportunities do spring up, and that's the wonderful thing about politics. I stood for the general election in 2019 for Birmingham Edgbaston, and it was quite hard fought, and the daylight hours are quite low, as Mark was saying, and you don't really want to go door knocking when it gets quite dark. There was rain, there was hail, you've got a small band of people who are just constantly there by your side, and it's so much fun, and trying to get your message out, talking to people on the doorstep, absolutely exhilarating. And as Mark says, I've heard many cases of friends who've just lost or won by a very, very small margin. And Andy Street, in terms of, you're talking about the West Midlands mayor, a population of 3 million people, and he won by 4,000 votes. That's 0.5 or 0.1% of it, is a tiny fraction, which equates to, I think it was 20 votes across each constituency, a tiny number. And then he's got in as mayor, and as Mark says, that whole journey then switches, and you can see the whole political landscape change very, very quickly. So votes absolutely do matter, and in terms of getting involved, I strongly advise everybody to get involved in politics and definitely to vote.
Amazing, thank you, Alex. Ahmad, I might ask you a slightly different question, because Alex started then to talk about getting involved in politics. For the young people on the call, what are kind of the first steps for them to get involved in local politics, and what kinds of opportunities are they? One person asked in particular if there are work experience type opportunities, or what type of things should they be looking out for?
So I think it really depends on where you are in the country. So where I am in Sandwell, something very good the council did earlier on was establish the Shadow Youth Cabinet, and it literally is what it said on the tin. A load of young people who were able to get involved and actually shadow cabinet members, which was really exciting. Now, I personally wasn't a part of the Shadow Youth Cabinet. I was a part of something we had then called the Sandwell Youth Parliament, which was a bigger number of young people. But I think getting involved in those initiatives where you can shadow a cabinet member or a councillor is really, really good, because one of those aspects and those daunting aspects that I think other colleagues on the panel will really testify to is the fact that you don't have work experience before you stand for office. It is all very new. And just linking into the question before, the election campaign is really nerve-wracking, because on the day of the election, I was so keen to be everywhere I could and knocking on every door. And actually, my campaign team just had to say to me, do you know what, Ahmed, it's now time to go home. But the sun is still shining. Let's knock some more doors. We don't know what's going to happen. And that was me. And I think for me, the other thing that I would say to young people is, as colleagues said earlier, it does not matter who you are, where you're from, standing for election is so possible. standing for election is so important. For someone like myself, I've been registered blind since birth. I'm the only blind councillor in Sandwell. I think I might be the only blind councillor in the West Midlands. And when I stood for election, I absolutely needed a fantastic team, which I was so fortunate to have, because as a blind person, I can't do door knocking without support. And to have really good Labour Party members that were alongside me, that were absolutely with me. My campaign manager, Simon, he actually took out his own birthday to come and campaign for me, because he knew that I needed that support. That sort of stuff and that type of support is really important. And actually, I think when you join a political party, if you decide to join a political party, you will find a group of people who will really come behind you. As Alex was saying, in terms of his campaigns that he's been involved in, they really come behind you when it comes to standing for election. So don't be worried. Don't think your disability or your background or your age is a barrier. Your party, your group, your activists, your friends, your family, they will really rally around you and do whatever they can to get you elected. And I think that's really important for all of us to remember.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ahmed. Extremely inspiring. There's been quite a lot of questions in the chat about, should I get in touch with my local council about this, and different issues. One thing that'd be really great to hear is, and you've alluded to it in your answers, but I guess just explicitly, how do people get in touch with their local councillors? What's the best way to get in touch, both from a practical perspective, but also in your approach? Because I imagine there are certain approaches that you find it easier to engage with than others. Mark, I wonder if you could take that question.
Contacts come from every direction, especially more so with COVID through Facebook. So almost every day, most people know Facebook Messenger, it gets, this person wants to connect with you. And it's like, oh, I wonder what that is. And 9 times out of 10, it's a new piece of casework and a new piece of work to do. And usually it's a positive thing. And another case, it's just one of those spam ones where someone wants to, I don't know, whatever you can imagine. So that is a way that residents get in touch with me. I'd say for most people asking the questions on the call, it's best to kind of Google your local area in terms of what's the council, who are the councillors, try and work out what ward you're in, which is not absolutely clear. I'm just trying to think what my polling card is. If you're old enough to vote, you get a polling card, it will say what ward you're in, and then you'll be able to absolutely find out who your councillor is. And I think it depends, as Armin was saying, depends where you live, depends how proactive your local councillors are. People in Wivenhoe, where I live, everyone knows who I am because they get leaflets from me all the time or see me on Facebook updating things. So it's fairly easy. I can't walk down the street without getting caught talking to someone else about something. Or when we eventually get back to the pub, that's where a lot of people say, I know you're in the pub and I shouldn't disturb you, but, and an hour later, we've talked about many potholes and everything else. But I think that it's probably best to find through your council's website who your councillors are, or if you're someone who's more value-based and think, right, reclaim the streets issues, I want to go and see who out of my councillors are actually championing this cause, or I want to go and check out some of the, have we got green councillors like Cleo who I think are the best to champion this cause, for example, then that might be the best way. And then email them, find them on Twitter, go through Facebook, whatever, try to just say, hey, and then if they're proactive enough, they'll pick up on your issue, they'll pick up on your enthusiasm and they'll come and help you. They may just signpost you to somewhere different, like Juliana on the chat was talking about mental health issues. So I'm on my local NHS trust and have absolutely been proud to pump more money into mental health as much as possible. So I would happily signpost and help her there. But other councillors might not have that secondary experience, so they just pass you to a particular committee or some of the actions that the council have been doing, or to the health colleagues.
Amazing, thank you so much. Cleo, I might come to you next with a question. You have been the Lord Mayor and are now a local councillor. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you have interest in running for Police and Crime Commissioner. So interested in all things local. It'd be really great to hear about the differences between those roles and kind of how they fit together in terms of your aspirations and your interests.
Sure, yeah. It's an interesting one, and I think what I've learned, whilst you know, again, we have wards to represent as being councillors. Of course, from the answers we've already heard, it's wider than that. And I think I've really enjoyed my experience on the Avon Fire Authority because it covers such a wide area, and you can kind of get stuck into kind of more issue-based, if you like. So that really relates to why I think I'm, you know, out of all the positions I've stood for deputy leader of the Green Party. I did that last year. I was also an MEP candidate. So I've had experience of standing for different positions, but actually Police and Crime Commissioner is the one I'm most excited about because it really does touch on some of the things that I would like to see different in society. And I think it's an incredibly important role. So yeah, there are differences in standing for these different positions, but it all comes down to how you, for me, how you listen, how you interact with citizens, how you can both represent concerns or, you know, other issues, but also mediate and be that bridge between institutions and communities. Because I think as well, what I have come to learn is that it's quite a confusing landscape. And sometimes I think we can presume that people know things when they don't. And I always advocate for demystifying the political process so that we can encourage as many people to feel comfortable in it and make it as accessible as possible to engage with it. So, you know, I'm always trying to encourage. When I was Lord Mayor, again, I would actually promote on my social media that full council was coming up because, you know, we want people to engage. As annoying as it might be for some councillors or some, you know, officers who have to follow things up, we want engagement. We want people to come and say what they think. We want questions. We want statements. We want interaction. We did used to have neighbourhood partnerships to kind of do a bit of that function that could feed in, but those were scrapped, and some communities have forums, some don't. We are now seeing an introduction of people's assemblies as another way to kind of find consensus and to collaborate and kind of bridge those kind of ideological gaps sometimes between people's perception of politicians and the reality. So to feel that we're all a community, we're all part of wanting to see a better place, a better space for all of us. And the more we can come together, share our views, concerns and solutions, the better. It shouldn't be hierarchical is what I'm trying to say.
Amazing, thank you. I'd be really interested to know from those who've joined today in the chat, what would help to demystify politics for you and make it more accessible as people who obviously have an interest. So any ideas you have to help us demystify and make it more accessible for even more people, that would be amazing. Feel free to pop that in the chat. Alex, one of the I guess things in terms of accessibility of politics is before you go to the polling station, finding out a bit about who's running for election and what they stand for, and being able to find out enough to figure out whether their priorities align with your priorities. What's the best way that people can go about finding out about you and other candidates?
Absolutely, and it's great to see. I mean, such a great discussion between all the people on the panel. We've talked about work experience. I mean, I know lots of councillors who take on secondary school students or university students for work experience. Mark suggested about where casework comes from, not just through Facebook, but Twitter, emails, phone calls, letters. We get it from all sorts of directions. I think personally, email will probably be easier for us to keep track of the work. But, you know, if you've got someone who's 60 or 80 or, you know, even 15 who haven't got access to a laptop or can't use the internet, then, of course, you know, we need to make it as accessible as possible. And in terms of, I mean, many of our journeys, we've just started with local campaigns. So, you know, for example, as Cleo said, you know, when she's really passionate about something, she went on marches. You will see other councillors or people who relate to your values and your issues. And then you get talking to people, you start joining that cause, you find someone like Mark on the doorstep who you relate to, and you get sucked into that charisma and that whirlwind of campaigning. And then, you know, sometimes you just really relate to some people. Sometimes you see, well, actually, you know, their values don't align with mine, and you go somewhere else. And I think that's a really powerful way of just, as you say, demystifying the process, making sure that councillors, I mean, we're just people at the end of the day as well. You know, we've got lives and, you know, we've got our own struggles personally, but we are trying to represent and help people. And in terms of also just demystifying the process, you've got full council meetings. You can ask questions directly at full council. You can submit a written question. You can get your answer read out. You can read the question out to the cabinet member. The cabinet member will then be obliged to apply. Apologies for the baby in the background. The cabinet member will be obliged to give you the formal answer back. Emails to councillors as well. But definitely register to vote, using your vote is so vitally important. And I touched on campaigning. It's very difficult for us to get our message out because you don't really want to do a litter pick and then take a photo and then sort of say, oh, look, here I am doing some litter picking. But actually, it's quite important for residents to know what the issues are. So we do things like litter picking. We've got Facebook, we've got Twitter, we've got things like that. But I always feel it only reaches a small proportion of society. A lot of people get the leaflet, chuck it in the bin. There'll be ward meetings, there'll be, you can go to surgeries, you can go to police station meetings, you can do all sorts, but not many people are that energized or, incentivized or interested or know of these sorts of meetings. So it's always a struggle for us as elected members. And I hope in terms of as we're reaching out, that residents are also reaching out to us as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's reflected in the turnout for local voter elections, which is about 33%, I think, on average up and down the country. We've had a really fantastic question from Lewis, and he's asked, it was mentioned how frustrating the bureaucratic machine can be when trying to push through policy or reform. How restricted either by central government or the institution itself do you feel in your role? And for new councillors, did this match your expectations? And for those who've been around a little longer, how has this changed since you won your first seat? So I guess, does anyone have an example that they want to share, or who would like to tackle this question? Alex, yeah?
Just very quickly, residents always say, can we get some double yellow lines? And to the normal person, you think it's just £20 worth of paints. But it takes like 30 grand and 3 years of campaigning and effort to try and get stuff done. And so much of it is bureaucratic. And I just wish sometimes we can get things done so much quicker. Councillors aren't the solution to everything. I think sometimes the most often thing I'm obliged to say is, no, we can't do it. People think that we can do everything. We can't. And, it's partly the bureaucratic system, it's partly the process, it's partly making sure the right thing is done, etc. But incredibly frustrating. But the odd wins, the small wins, are very, very fulfilling.
Thank you. I think that's in any political space, whether you're a campaigner or a politician, the small wins need celebrating to keep you motivated. Ahmad, were you going to come in on that question? And then
so I think it's a really important point, because actually when you look at an institution, and particularly for us as young people, when I was elected back in 2019, I think I was fortunate enough to go in alongside members from the LGBTQ plus community, younger members, more Black, Asian, minority, ethnic community members. So we were a very, very, and are a very diverse bunch. I think now in terms of our cabinet, we have one of the most diverse cabinet in the country in terms of councils. So it was a huge shift change, even for us as a council that's been a Labour authority for many years. We were fortunate to have such a huge number of people coming in that brought massive amount of diversity to the political landscape. And I think what it's allowed people like myself to do is drive change. So I'm fortunate enough to be chair of the Sandwell Equalities Commission. And I was really passionate about this because actually belonging to a number of groups and a number of different groups that haven't been represented as well or at all for a number of years has given me the opportunity, as Cleo said earlier, and she's absolutely right. For a long time, you have a situation where particular discussions are not being had at the decision-making table. So things like accessible transport, accessible road crossings. There should be a pelican crossing here, or there should be a zebra crossing here. I can now, as a blind person, sit at that table and say, have we thought about this? And quite often the response is, oh no, we didn't think about that, or it's never been brought up before. So I think that really going and having those discussions within an institution and saying, look, things need to change. We cannot stay with the status quo is really important. And even if you are a backbench councillor or a frontbench councillor, so whether you're someone who's on the back benches or the front benches in the group that's in control or not, in quote unquote control, you still have power because you have that power of your voice. Cleo mentioned earlier full council. Full council is brilliant because any councillor can stand up at full council and talk about whatever you want to talk about. You can challenge the cabinet member, the decision maker. And I think that's the most important thing, that even if you get elected and you're frustrated because you're feeling as though you're not making a change, you are, because at the very least, you're a thorn, a very prickly thorn in the side driving for change. And I certainly hope I can do more work on that in my new role as chair of the Equalities Commission here locally.
Thank you, Ahmad. Some really tangible examples of why diversity is important. So thank you for that. Mark, I think you wanted to come in on this as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to make a really tangible point, but just to relate to what Ahmed said, it's really inspiring to hear what he's doing there. I mean, I'm very open-minded and liberal, but I'm still able-bodied and don't always think of everything that would affect people who have sight impairment or disabilities. But for me, I think it's always about pushing forward, similar to what Ahmed said, in terms of, for me, it's about equity, whether that be about disabilities, whether that be about prejudice, inbuilt bias, breaking down the patriarchy, which we need to keep doing. So there's many things that I will take forward and try and break down the barriers. But I'm still a white, fairly middle-class man. So we do need a diverse team around us to do that. But one tangible thing I was going to say is, I was elected back in 2007, so that is a lifetime ago. And we had a bit more money in the system back then. So unfortunately, austerity has definitely affected. So councils are bureaucratic. It's really hard to get stuff done, but with passion and hope, you can. And you can get things done yourself if you really keep going. But I do believe that the cuts that have happened to local government have been really to the detriment of some local democracy and local action. So I'd like to see reinvestment into local government. It really needs to happen. And during COVID, local government has really delivered where national government hasn't. So very primarily with test and trace, when it gets passed down to the local level, it is done much better than the national level. So one last tangible example is, we used to have £12 million a year from the government in our budget for Colchester, and that was cut down each year. Now we receive zero. So we have to increase income and reduce costs. So that has meant we probably aren't as sort of adaptive as we used to be. And I think that that's a shame. And we need to look at how actually local government can deliver for so many things, providing a community that supports people and brings people up.
That's so important. Thank you, Mark. I'm going to ask 3 quick fire questions of each of you, as we've only got a few minutes left. My first one is, if you could either introduce, change or abolish any local council policy, what would it be? And I've asked Ahmad this before, so he should have an answer prepared. So I'm going to go to him first. How's the rest of you think?
So I don't want to sound like a trap record, but actually I go back to what I said to you previously. What I would do is, we have a thing called the council tax reduction scheme, where the most deprived residents, and they're only deprived economically, not in terms of talent or anything else, they need that support, as Mark was saying, and austerity's had a devastating impact on people. What I would do is I would introduce our council tax reduction scheme nationally, so that those who are on the lowest incomes don't have to pay a penny in council tax. I would love to see that be rolled out, and obviously getting more money from central government must, definitely.
Thank you, Cleo.
Gosh, I don't think that was sent in the pre-meeting briefing. I think it would be something around youth, but youth empowerment and budgets towards youth. So free travel would be a good one. Equally, I do like the idea of certain areas being car free for a Sunday afternoon and something like that. It would be around those lines.
I love all of those. I think free transport would make such a big change to people's lives and also the environment. And I love the idea of on a Sunday afternoon that's just like, no cars. Fantastic, thank you. Alex?
I'm a bit of a drive at the moment on antisocial behaviour and graffiti and littering. There's been a plight of graffiti tags that's appeared down the high street, and we actually managed to get one person caught. It took months and months of investigation, and it turns out he had a track record of 60-odd offences. And unfortunately, this time when he got caught, he was given a £60 fine. He got released, and then he carried on doing it the next day. So it'll be something around that as well, to see how we can better support people to stop them from doing it, but also proper rehabilitation processes and practices just to really get them to see the impact of their actions, which is so frustrating because it blights businesses, it makes the high street look bad, and it takes thousands of pounds to fix what is in effect a couple of seconds of work.
I really like the way that you have thought about tackling that rather than harsher punishment.
Lock them all up, that's as well.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, I like Cleo's responses, and mine's going to be similar. The youth stuff, we're stepping in and doing ourselves, so it's not a wish anymore because we're trying to do it. So I'll park that one because we're overcoming that. What I would do if I was in government, and I think I can implement it locally, was public transport. Public transport should be public. Okay, what's the point in calling it public transport if it's not public? So I would renationalise, and I'd start at a local level. We don't have transportation powers, but I'd like to run our own bus companies, make them absolutely fully electric, make sure that our transport system is as green and as high tech as possible. And that will help both young people and older people at both ends of the spectrum, of course, people working in town. So I'd love to see little buses going around that we have a control of the council.
Yeah. Dangerously Labour there, Mark. I think Cleo may have a membership form for you later.
No, it's fine. As a Liberal Democrat, I don't have a whip locally, so we can come up with good ideas no matter where they come from, left or right.
I totally agree. I'll send you one to you.
Brilliant, thank you. So in the next one is, in one sentence, why is it important that people vote in the upcoming local elections? I'll go in the same order, so Ahmad, over to you first, in one sentence.
To make change in our local communities, and as the late great Mahatma Gandhi once said, be that change you want to be in the world.
Amazing, thank you. Cleo.
Okay, it's a long sentence with commas in it. That still counts, doesn't it? I believe we must exercise the right that is denied to others in other places in the world, and a right that many, many people before us fought for. The system isn't perfect, but it does have hope. It's best to engage to see the change.
Thank you. That's so inspiring. Alex.
Decisions are made by those who turn up. Simple as.
Yeah. Mark.
All very good. That's what they said. I think you've got to speak out and like Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see. And I think I also believe in, by you speaking out, you can speak out for others too. So not just for yourself. By making that vote could make other people's lives better, those who can't vote, or those who are too young to vote, for example. So take the vote, make some action, make the change that you want to see.
Thank you so much. Such inspiring words. I almost feel like I shouldn't ask another question because there were such good answers, but I am going to ask the final question because I ask it at the end of all of the interviews that we have. Can you finish this sentence? I have a voice. This time, Mark first.
So I suppose very similar to what I said just now, that I have a voice to speak out and make change, but I really believe in using my voice for others who lack a voice, or to enable them to gain a voice. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Alex.
I was kind of hoping you'd come to me last. I have a voice to make a hope into reality, something along those lines. It's because it all comes from a thought, a feeling, it's something intangible, and then you make it happen through action.
Amazing, thank you. Cleo.
Okay. No one has my particular experience. As a dual heritage woman of African heritage, I am brave and I am strong in the face of adversity. I have always stood for justice and for our shared humanity. I care about people. I care about the planet. I believe in being happy. That's my goal.
Amazing. Thank you. And Ahmad?
I have a voice because no matter where I came from, no matter what disability I have, I am important. I have a voice to make a change in my local community, the region, and who knows, maybe even the world.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for answering all of the questions as they were coming into the chat, for taking time out of your day today. I greatly appreciated it. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebecca, for hosting. You did a fantastic job. Thank you so much, you did.
It's been fantastic. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Rebecca. See you later.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys.